Oh my gosh, I've been so good as a presenter at work all these years. Now I don't want to mess it up when I know millions of people are going to. So what I always remind people is it's a process. There's no finish line. Everybody's going to hit a wall and feel nervous.
Jill Wesley, thank you so much for joining my show, 20 Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
How have you helped 80,000 people become better speakers and convey their messages? How is that humanly possible?
How is it humanly possible? Well, I've done it for almost 30 years. And the number actually is higher than 85,000. It's because I was a road warrior for a really long time. So we did communication, intercultural communication, and speaker coaching. So I was on the road for a long time working with thousands and thousands of people.
What does that mean, working on the road? It means literally being on the road, moving between company and company and working physically with them?
I used to be one of those, my 20s were spent traveling around the world doing it
Wow.
as kind of a part-time backpacker. And then I would land in a country, make something work, save money, and then go spend it and travel some more. But then in my 30s, I did corporate training and coaching. So I worked with, as a consultant. So I was, for a number of years, I was on the road maybe 100 days a year.
100 days a year.
50 states all over the world. Yeah, it was a lot.
Give me, a little bit of taste. What were like some of the craziest places that this work took you, or craziest experiences?
Crazy experiences. Well, all the experiences were later. You learn with time. Time and distance equals humor. So a lot of the crazy, really difficult things that went on later became the best stories. I always tell my clients that when they're putting their keynotes together. But there were times where, I showed up to do a speaking gig and there was no room for us, or I had a fist fight one time in a session. But in terms of location, I've always, yeah. But in terms
Just
of
casually putting that in there and continuing. I love it.
I said that too casually, but when it's human behavior and you get a group of people together, it's a human lab and anything's possible. I didn't start the fight, but I'm just saying like anything can happen. But in terms of actual locations, I've just been really honored to work all over Asia and Europe, and
Wow.
spent 3 months in Australia working at 23. I got to work at 8 major universities in Australia. I didn't work that hard. It was fun and distracting and, sunny. It was great.
Unbelievable. Okay, so I had the privilege of giving a TEDx talk in Palo Alto about, I guess it was 5 years ago. It was hard. It
Yeah.
was a process. It was really, really difficult. Not just getting up on stage, which is frightening for any person, no matter how much you don't think you'll be scared. But the whole process is very difficult. Why is giving keynotes or presentations so hard?
Well, it's hard for a number of reasons. If it's a business presentation, the average person can be challenged with it because there's a lot riding on it. It's the reputation at work. It's moving a process forward at work. It's getting your ideas heard or helping people make big decisions. So a lot of people know that there's a lot at stake and they feel nervous. If someone's doing a keynote, it's usually the combination of their work experience plus a bit of their thought leadership or personal brand. My day-to-day is spent with senior leaders who have a track record of success. So by the time they're on stage and we are working together at major events, part of it is, oh my gosh, I've been so good as a presenter at work all these years. Now I don't want to mess it up when I know millions of people are going to. So what I always remind people is it's a process. There's no finish line. Everybody's going to hit a wall and feel nervous. I joke, my clients usually at one point are thinking like, how do I get out of doing this talk? What if I just tell them I was sick? What if I go in the witness protection program? All these fantasies of not having to do it. But my job as a coach is to just let them know that's a normal process. It's the messy middle. And, I actually have a process to get them from start to finish.
I like that, the messy middle, this idea that at some point throughout the process you're going to reach this block where you're saying, okay, I'm not prepared yet, it's not ready yet, and you forget that there are a few days left or a few weeks left, and you're sort of, I guess, imagining yourself giving the talk as it is now, even though that's not the reality. You still have time, right? But tell me about this process that you work, because it's so fascinating to me, because obviously it is, I believe that the fear of public speaking, if I'm not mistaken, is more common than fear of death. I think it's
Yeah,
the
we haven't sourced that research, so it's an oft quoted,
yeah, of course.
but it is a common fear. I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
To this day, I'm not sure if I've heard anybody actually dying from public speaking. So most people, but it's, death itself is very existential, but the fear that we experience in the nerves giving a talk is real, and it's likely, and it happens over and over again. So for most people, it's a concern that on a cellular level for people, there's a concern that they're going to be judged, that they're going to fail.
yes,
And your body is registering an actual threat, and it's trying to protect you. So what a lot of people don't realize is when they're feeling nervous, they will then criticize themselves for feeling nerves. Like, I can't believe I told myself I wouldn't feel this way, or I've been doing this for 5 years. Why?
Okay.
And that self-criticism never makes the nerves go away. That's number one. Number two, reframing it from I'm feeling like I'm going to die and my body's betraying me. If you understand that your body is actually having a response and it's doing what it thinks it needs to do to help you, and then reframing it from nerves to excitement. Most of my clients, I will say, the keynote clients that I work with are not terribly nervous. They're excited. They've been speaking for years and in business or science for a number of years. So they're hungry and they're excited. And
Sure.
my job is to pull them out, like to get more of them into their talk. So it's not just their data and not just their work.
So what makes a successful keynote? Whether it's a business keynote that's full of data and statistics, or if it's more of a personal keynote about your personal journey, or about how others can get inspiration from your journey. So give me some ideas of what makes a successful keynote.
Yeah, I call them the 3 R's. So the measure of a really successful presentation or talk isn't did everybody jump up and do a standing ovation, because that's an experience in the moment, but I really care about what happens when people leave. So the three things are the 3 R's. Is your content relatable? So for far too long, people have gotten up on stage and spoken from a place or a perspective that was not taking into account the different lived experiences of people of color like me, or women's experiences in work and life. So is the content relatable? And do you truly understand and respect your audience, where you're putting content together that relates to them? Number 2, is your content something that people can remember? So you have to relate. Can people remember it? Meaning it's structured effectively, that you're not doing a total data dump, or you're telling you a personal story that takes 17 minutes that isn't relevant to the audience. And then the third piece is, can people repeat it? Because a lot of my clients actually create movements. They're working at really high levels. If we're going to create systemic change or cultural change, movement type work, people have to be able to repeat what they heard to serve others. So those are the 3 things I talk about.
And how do you measure that? So I gave a talk and I went off of stage, and yeah, it's on YouTube and we have the views. How do I actually measure whether my talk was successful, and according to these 3 R's?
Yeah, it depends on the industry and the type of speaker I'm working with. So yes, of course, it's great to have those metrics and see that, one of my clients' talks is at 3 million. That's fabulous. However, the folks that I'm working with are already head down doing the deep work, and they happen to be on stage talking about it. So the metrics that we're actually looking at is, did they get funding? Was there an increase in funding? It's a business development tool.
Right.
Were they able to get some key relationships that help them with their research? Were they able to align and get connections with policymakers? So it's much more tangible beyond the applause or the
Sure.
gold stars.
No, I think it's incredible. I'm coming from the software world, and in the software world, when we launch, for example, a product, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. One is you put up the website and you want to measure how many impressions have you had, how many people have gone and seen your beautifully designed logo and your beautiful
Right.
website, and then the question is how many people actually put their credit card and paid, how many people actually converted to paying customers, which is obviously what you're optimizing for. You're not optimizing for how many people have seen it. You're optimizing for how many people have bought into your messaging. And that brings me on to a set of questions that I have, because going through this experience, you watch all these incredible talks, whether it's on TED or all these different platforms, and a lot of people are wondering as well, myself included, how much are they improvised in the moment, authentic versus very rehearsed? Because a lot of them feel extremely improvised, very lively in the moment, but there is a lot of preparation that goes in there. So how do you balance between the two?
Yeah. So that's good that a lot of them feel improvised to you, because the bigger events. So I'm head of speaker coaching for TEDx San Francisco. So we're a premier event, global event.
Yeah,
And our our speakers, there's no way we're going to let people just go up there and wing it. It's just
of
not in the
course.
they won't present their best content that way, and the audience won't have the best experience. You can't just take
Sure.
that risk. And TED itself, because I've coached speakers that have spoken on TED stages, they work
Wow.
together with coaches for months and months. So the
Months
goal
and
is,
months.
what people get where they get stuck is, I don't want to sound canned. I don't want to sound rehearsed and like I'm a robot.
Yes.
I don't want that either. But there's a difference between memorizing a talk and then actually integrating that talk into who you are. And that's the difference
Exactly.
if you're thinking about someone who's an actor. An actor will know their lines, but a really good actor kind of disappears into the character, and they're having that experience with the audience. So I'm different from some other coaches because my job is to meet my clients where they are. I have a ton of strategy in my pocket. So if I'm working with someone who I know is the type that really needs to like write their speech out word for word, and they're really attached to that, I'll let them do that initially. But I'm always going to get them from, it's not memorizing word for word, it's just knowing the flow. And
Yeah.
if it's someone who likes to kind of be loose and be improvisational, I still get them to know the flow. So they
Right.
know
Right.
they're going to hit this. They've practiced it multiple times, but there's space in the event that the audience will laugh. I mean,
Right.
I put a lot of help my clients put humor in their talks, and you will get a response from the audience or you'll get spontaneous applause. So you have to be present to actually engage with people in that moment.
It's hilarious you bring this up. I gave a talk back in when I was 14. It was my second time on stage. It was about growing up in real time. I had nothing interesting to say except for how a 14-year-old uses Skype to do video call with their math class from 15,000 miles away. Back then, it was 10 years ago. It wasn't very common, so it
No.
was interesting to
Yeah.
people in the audience. But what the funny thing was that I prepared so much for this talk. I'm releasing a book soon where I talk about some childhood experiences, and one of the experiences was walking around Central Park with my brother, and he is rehearsing with me word for word my speech and my talk for weeks. And leading up to the talk, I knew it so well. I could say it in the middle of my sleep. I get to the stage, and my first question is, "Hey, how is everybody doing?" Now, when I rehearsed this talk, I never actually gave pause because there was nobody to answer. So when I got on stage, I said, "Hey, how everybody's doing? Great, let's get started." And I never gave them a way to answer, which was it's
Oh,
hilarious.
that's what happens. It is. I see a keynote in particular as a living thing. So
Yeah,
very similar to you in product, I think of a keynote for my clients, it's a product launch. So it's an iterative process. We use universal design theory. We have to test. You have to do all of those steps that you would do with product to make sure that whatever you create and deliver is truly something to the best of your ability, is something that the audience is going to relate to and
sure.
respond. But you have to take notes once you've done your keynote, or you have to watch the film afterwards to see what really landed, and pay attention to the questions you get in the comments afterwards, because it will inform this keynote. Because I help people design an asset that they're going to keep using. So
Right.
nobody should be giving the same exact keynote over and over to audience after audience, because you're in a different city, you're talking to people in different roles, different levels within an organization. You'd have to make it tie into what their lived experience is.
100%. So, in the few minutes we have left, I'd love some pointers on things that I could take with me to whatever future presentations I make, or at least the process of working on those presentations, because obviously not everybody is so lucky to have you as a coach in preparing for their keynotes. And I'd love to get some pointers into what can I do the next time I go to present something to my boss in the startup that I work for. What can my friends do when they're about to go in class and present something in front of 500 people on their research?
Sure. I have a 5-step process I use called Dig Deeper. Because you can find in 10 minutes, 10 seconds, you can find the steps to give a general presentation. You analyze your audience, you get your big message together and support it and then put an action step. But something deeper that I use as a checklist with senior leaders is 5 steps. So first, you have to speak the truth. So it's really figuring out, what is my truth, my understanding of the truth, and do I have an accurate sense of what's actually going on? Because if you're presenting, let's say it's someone who's entry level or middle management, and they're presenting to their boss and they're not accurate, it's a credibility hit right there. So make sure that you really have the truth, and you are acknowledging your blind spots and biases. Second, right, it's empathy. And it's not just empathy for how other people are feeling, but having a sense of cognitive empathy. So it's what might be, what are other people thinking about, and a bit of what's called rational compassion, because there are limits to empathy. We tend to empathize the most with people who are similar to us.
Yeah.
Or people, if we've had a similar experience where we say, well, I did it, it shouldn't be that hard, just work hard, you can do it yourself. And it's like, listen, someone's having a different life journey than you are. So it's truth, it's empathy. Yeah. And then it's really thinking about, do you have an element of hope when you're talking? Are you speaking in a way where people feel like they can do this? That it's not beyond everybody's ability. Sure. The 4th step is your vision. So what do you see as possible, and can you communicate it in a way that other people can actually be there right with you? And then the last step, which is huge, is accountability. Accountability is missing from most talks. There are real general things at the end of a presentation or a talk, and people just be really general, like, you can do it, come on. And if people can't get a clear grasp of what needs to be done, those initial steps, they're less likely to do anything. And that's why people go from event to event to event to get pumped up, but they don't know how to actually do it. So they're chasing the high of being in the room versus, oh, wait, I want to make some behavioral change. It actually takes strategy and habit.
I like the accountability. Jill, why spend so much time on this? Why work with so many speakers? Why go through this process? What gets you excited about science and soul of speaking?
Oh my gosh. I have the best job in the world. Like I'm truly doing the thing I love to do most. My work doesn't feel like work at all. And I stand on the shoulders of people who came before me. I'm African American. I come from generations of people who weren't able to use their voice. And amazing. I'm fortunate to have that luck. Yeah, I've worked hard, but it's luck and timing. I was born when I was born. And I feel that everyone deserves the ability to speak their truth and know what matters. And that's why I do this work.
I love it. Before we leave, I want to thank you again for being so generous of your time. This was just wonderful, insightful, inspiring. I just loved it, and I definitely look forward to reflecting on this talk as I continue on in my journey, and hopefully collaborate together one day if I'm ever fortunate enough to make it to those big stages that you help people on. Before we leave, Jill, I need 3 words that you would use to describe yourself, and why those 3 specific words?
Okay, well, I've been inside the house for months. So, I mean, my initial three words are like yoga pants, potato chips, and TV. But if we go a little bit deeper, um, the first one is commitment. I'm really committed to doing the work I do and helping people. It's curiosity. I've always
Yeah,
been I've always been curious and willing to challenge myself to keep my mind open, and then collaborative, because nobody gets ahead on their own, and it's really about working together. And if you get into a big room and you get through that door, it's keeping that door open and waving other people into.
I love it. Jill, thank you very, very much.
My
This was
pleasure.
just wonderful. And stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks.